like to call the meeting to order. I will turn it right over to Dr. Burnham to confirm member access.
As a preliminary matter, this is Dr. Burnham, Superintendent of Schools. I will do a roll call to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Chairperson Bertrand,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Archambault,
Yes.
Secretary Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
and staff. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Recording Secretary, Ms. Susan Summers,
Yes.
Business Manager, Mr. Michael Cassidy,
Yes.
Lunenburg High School Principal, Mr. Rob McGrath,
Yes.
Lunenburg Middle School Principal, Mr. Tim Santry. Did I hear Tim Santry?
Yes.
Okay. Turkey Hill Elementary School Principal, Mrs. Heidi Champagne,
Yes.
and Primary School Interim Principal, Mr. Chad Adams.
Yes.
Our Interim Director of Teaching and Learning, Mrs. Annika Scott,
Yes.
and our Title I Director, Mrs. Rebecca Hyde.
Yes.
Okay, and I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Good evening. In accordance with the requirements of open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel and streaming live on Facebook at a later time. And this meeting of the Lunenburg School Committee is being conducted remotely. The town of Lunenburg, in response to the COVID-19 coronavirus, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health, Massachusetts Department of Public Health, and the CDC regarding the virus and steps communities can take to prevent the spread. And all town facilities are currently closed to the public. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL 30A Section 20, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town website on the COVID-19 Information Center page accessed through the town manager's webpage, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Lunenburg School Committee is convening by telephone conference, video conference via Zoom app, Facebook Live, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and some attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. So take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. So allow me to cover a few meeting ground rules. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, a few things to allow us to conduct our business clearly and ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, Wendy Bertrand, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold your name. Please hold until your name is called. And further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. I will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only, and I will call on each by name and afford up to 3 minutes for any comments, a total of 10 minutes for all. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So the first item on our agenda is the chair's report, which is me, and I don't have one. I'm going to turn it right over to moving the meeting along. Next, we have public comment open to any agenda items. So I'm taking a look now to see if we have any public comment.
I don't see any.
I was going to say, I'm looking for hands raised. I'm looking down the line. I do not see any either. So we will move on from this public comment to reviewing and approving meeting minutes. So we have regular session minutes from September 2nd and September 6th. That's actually October 2nd and October 16th. Did anyone on the committee have any questions after reviewing? If not, I will take a motion to approve those meeting minutes. It was September 2nd and 16th. I don't know why I questioned what was written there. September 2nd, September 16th. No questions, anyone?
I did
Ms.
have,
Archambault?
I did have one thing on the September 16th minutes that I had. I didn't see them till late this afternoon, so I'm sure there wasn't a chance to correct them by now. So I don't know, procedurally, can I just explain what that is and we can fix it as we go along?
Ms. Summers has a comment.
Just a note that I heard from Liz, and she did add Carol's corrections. And so I believe those were taken care of.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Then Ms. Archambault, do you want to put forward a motion?
I can do that then. I would like to move that the minutes from the September 2nd and September 16th regular session meetings be approved.
Is there a second? Ms. Kelly?
This is Laura Kelly, and I second that motion.
Then we are ready for roll call vote.
Okay, Mrs. Archambault,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Now we're on to the superintendent's report.
So I would like to take a moment to introduce Mr. Kevin White, who's here on the meeting this evening. He's the interim assistant principal for the primary school and the Turkey Hill Elementary School. So Kevin, if you would just give everybody a wave so they can see who you are. All right, so I have an update for you on the Turkey Hill Elementary School HVAC. We recently conducted an air quality test at the Turkey Hill Elementary School. Ms. Delonda walked the building, accompanied by a representative from the teachers union. Happy to report that all the rooms tested in an appropriate range. Now that more windows will likely be closed, Ms. Delonda will do a walkthrough inspection of the facility weekly to ensure that the system is operating appropriately in each classroom. And we're planning another air quality test the week of November 16th. We're also seeking a contractor to provide an inspection of the system. Again, that's part of the MOA with the teachers union. We will be looking to purchase air purifier units for 2 classrooms without functioning ventilation due to the installation of the elevator lift many years ago. In addition, we will look to provide a unit for the nurse's office as well. Enrollment, as you know, October 1st is our first report to the state for the data. Our student enrollment as of October 1st is 1,616 students. This is the number that the state funding will be based on. This is the number that the state funding is based on every year. It's important to note that this year we have 106 students being homeschooled. This is a significant increase from the 45 students last year. The Mass Association of School Superintendents has been gathering enrollment data from districts and is advocating with legislators that the FY22 funding be based on a hold harmless based on some previous enrollment number, whether that's last year's October 1st number or some number later in the year, maybe in January. All that's yet to be determined, but please know that this is a challenge statewide, and we have advocates working on our behalf. The Remote Learning Center, we currently have 12 students in the remote classroom. These students are grades 2 through 6. The program is open from 7:30 to 3:45. 8 students are children of school personnel and 4 students are children of town personnel. Following the early education and care and Department of Elementary and Secondary Education protocols, we may service up to 13 students per classroom. The majority of these students attend 2 to 3 days weekly, with only 4 students attending full-time 4 days a week. A few of these students will begin going back to their own school district following a hybrid model. Many of these districts have been on full remote and are entering a phase of reopening and entering a hybrid model situation. However, some of those students are still going to attend a few days a week. The 2 paraprofessionals who facilitate this class provide assistance with internet issues as well as some assistance with educational programming, specifically for the younger students who often have some difficulty with the remote assignments. Students and parents provide weekly schedules for the staff who provide ongoing support to reinforce the student learning so that the student's time in this venue is purposeful. Each student has a completed and signed contract and medical forms, and releases are signed as well, and the students are signed in daily. Each student wears a mask and utilizes the same desk daily with a minimum of 6 feet of spacing, and students are able to access the outdoor space for mask breaks or when they have a school break. Behavior and protocols are consistent with the Lunenburg schools. Capacity for live streaming at the middle high school. As you know, we tested the system recently and have confirmed that the bandwidth to the middle high school is sufficient to support live streaming. We continue to engage the LEA in conversation about a transition to a live stream model of instruction. Teachers have expressed many concerns with that model. At this time, based on the ongoing conversations, I do not anticipate any whole school live streaming before Q2. We have reserved a portion of the Department of Ed CARES grant to purchase additional monitors, cables, and microphones for the high school teachers should we move to a live streaming model. There was an additional state grant, not a Department of Ed grant, that we were hoping that we might apply for to fund the purchase of some higher grade cameras for the classrooms. However, our IT director misread the deadline date and our application for an additional state grant missed the submission deadline. I've asked him to provide a report regarding this particular matter. The town manager is also aware and she has indicated that the town's CARES funds would be sufficient to cover this purchase if needed. It's important to note that all of these monies, our DESE CARES grant and the CARES monies that the town has, must be expended and materials must be in hand by the end of December. And I'll end with some good news. Cam Begley competed in the Science Olympiad and his project placed 7th in a national Science Olympiad tournament on October 10th. This was the largest Science Olympiad tournament of all time, I'm told, and attracted 4,500 students from across the country. So placing in the top 10 in a tournament of this magnitude is a really, truly remarkable accomplishment. So congratulations to Cam and to the advisors to our Science Olympiad program. They're doing a phenomenal job inspiring kids to love science. And that's all I have for you for the update. Lots more in the agenda.
Thank you. Moving on, our student representative is not with us tonight, so we will, if for some reason she does come back on before the end of the meeting, I will see if we can take that item out of order to have her give her report. But in the meantime, moving on to our first item of action tonight, it's our school improvement plans.
So this is where I'll hand things over to the principals. They can present an overview of their school improvement plans for the year. I'll ask Mr. Santry to kick this off.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me here tonight to discuss Lunenburg Middle School's school improvement plan. Before we start, I'd really like to thank my school advisory council for their work in creating the goals that will help move our school forward. Even during the shutdown last spring, when we met virtually, we were able to discuss and develop the school improvement plan. We were able to meet again yesterday and review the small changes that we've made in this plan. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Burnham. This summer, Dr. Burnham provided the administration with a new school improvement template that helped us with our work. The template assisted our group in focusing and aligning our school improvement goals and actions with those of the district goals and the district strategic objectives and the strategy plan. So with this strong alignment of district and school goals, we can now develop administrator goals and ultimately teacher evaluation goals that are also aligned with the district's vision. This focus and alignment with this new template affords us to make it easier to move forward as a district and better and more efficiently serve students. So I'm really interested to see the results, and thank you, Dr. Burnham, for your leadership on that. I appreciate it.
Well, I can't take the credit because our new curriculum leaders in the district worked on this template as well. So thank you to both of them as well.
Oh, team effort, even better. So I would really, I was not going to read my plan to you. I believe reading 4 school improvement plans to you in one night is cruel and unusual punishment, but I believe you have a copy, and there's a copy posted at the LMS website. And once it's been approved, I will send the link to the plan to all of my parents. So with your permission, rather, I'd like to go over the major components of the plan. Great.
Yes, please.
So our middle school improvement plan in the past has always been heavily weighted on MCAS results and achievement in the area of student growth. We didn't have that luxury of having MCAS scores to analyze this year. So one of the major changes in our plan comes in utilizing different assessments and diagnostics that will determine a student's strengths and weaknesses and how to drive instruction based on those assessments, and how to progress monitor along the way and determine if students are making progress rather than depending on our traditional MCAS scores. So we've been utilizing a diagnostic tool in our iExcel program to benchmark students' achievement in the areas of math and ELA at all grade levels. And we are working with Annika Scott and our vertical teams at the middle school to analyze that information and using other assessments that will help us in determining if students have any deficits and if they are learning and how we are assessing what they are learning. So we're going to measure whether we achieve this action step if all teachers are following the assessment system that we put forth, and that they are adjusting their instruction based upon the results of those assessments. So we are also going to be utilizing effective vertical team meetings consisting of teachers and other content areas besides math and science that will be developing and refining their common assessments that will achieve the same outcome, determining where students are in terms of the standards and whether or not they're making progress throughout the year. So that's really our first strategic step. Our second action step also includes our vertical teams. as well as our administration, will be looking at our curriculum through an equity lens. We'd like to determine if we need to enhance our curriculum materials to represent a more diverse cultural background. In conjunction with the Equity Council this year, I'd like to perform an equity audit of our curriculum material. It's really kind of the first step in providing or determining if we need to provide some more diversity in the selections for our students we have at the middle school. So that kind of encompasses my action steps for the first goal. Our second goal, which is still traditionally around the social emotional well-being of our students. This year, we've developed a Lunenburg Middle School Behavioral Health Council. It consists of administration, social workers, school psychologists, and the guidance staff. And our goal is to ensure that students with mental health or social emotional issues are provided the supports they require, and no student falls through the cracks this year. So we have met twice already. We will meet again on Monday. So in this council, we've developed several documents that are focused toward a tiered system of support that we provide to students, and we provide and whether they're being successful. And we're in the process of developing a student survey, so we're able to get student feedback on whether they felt the interventions have been helpful to them. That's a major step for us. We're always asking the adults on whether our strategies are successful. This year, we're going to incorporate a student survey and determine if they felt that we have been supportive throughout the year. So I'm also going to work closely with the district behavioral health advisory and implement any recommendations that they may have to improve or facilitate our advisory groups that we work with at the middle school. So our third goal is kind of a straight and forward goal. It talks about providing additional opportunities for students by examining and altering the middle school schedule to better align with the high school, to provide some additional common planning time for teachers, and to continue to look for those additional opportunities to share staff members or to increase curricular opportunities for students in the middle school. I came in front of school committee, I believe in May, with a plan to provide Algebra 1 to 8th grade students. Unfortunately, that plan has kind of been sidelined by the pandemic and coronavirus. Once all of our restrictions are lifted, we're going, I hope, right back to that plan and be able to offer those 8th grade Algebra 1 opportunities. But there's many other opportunities. I'd like to sit down with Mr. McGrath and maybe a team of teachers that we can get together and see how we can best align those schedules to provide more opportunities for students. In the past, we've always talked about bringing foreign language down to grade 6 or 7, or do we have an opportunity to bring mock trial up to the high school as an elective for students up there? Can we get art classes for middle schoolers, or can we get an additional PE class somewhere mixed in the mix if we had 2 or 3 blocks that were locked in the middle and the high school schedules? So those are the things that we're going to be working on this year. We have several markers during the year in which we're going to benchmark our progress, and hopefully I'll be able to report out to you on our school improvement in May and show you what type of progress we've made toward our goals. So if anyone had any questions, I'd be happy to take some questions.
Any questions? Looking to see any questions from the committee. I do have a question, Mr. Santry. I was just trying to look down the line, see if the committee members, any committee members had any questions prior. You touched on it in goal 3, Mr. Santry, about the alignment with the high school. Is the plan still, when restrictions, pandemic related, are lifted, to look at the non-teaming for 8th grade as well?
Yes. Yes, I would, that was approved by the school committee and only put on the back burner because of the pandemic situation. once all the full restrictions are lifted and the timing is right for students, that we roll back into that kind of 8th grade team model that I had presented in May.
Any other questions? Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr.
very
Santry.
much. You're
And
welcome.
I think we'll turn it over to Mrs. Champagne.
Good evening. Heidi Champagne, principal of the Turkey Hill Elementary School. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. Certainly also want to give a nod to my school advisory council. We met on Monday to hash out the details of our school improvement plan. Ms. Archambault, we do miss you though, but we're happy to welcome Mr. Layton into our team. We carefully reviewed each sort of draft goal and wordsmithed it down to where everyone felt comfortable and confident about what our intention was. So if you don't mind, instead of just watching me, I'm going to share the screen and I'll just show you the goals real quickly. All right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so as Mr. Santry talked about, we're trying to align from the superintendent on down. So her big bucket item of transforming teaching and learning, that falls under standard 1 for the teacher evaluation system, which is curriculum planning and assessment. So if you go down to the white box and bold right here, our goal 1 is to ensure that all students can demonstrate significant growth in reading and writing, working towards or exceeding grade level in order to successfully access all content area curriculum. And I think you'll see that when each principal shares their goals tonight, that these goals are also aligned. Mr. Santry's first goal is the extension of this at the middle school level. But for us, we want to make sure that they're doing their very best in reading and writing and feeling comfortable in all subject areas because of their proficiency there. And so we are using our, let me just try to scroll this down. Hold on one sec. There it is. We're using our new diagnostic tool, the iReady tool, which Rebecca Hyde has so very nicely introduced to us along with Annika. So our strategic priorities, these are the only things that I want to highlight for you, is to design both in-person and remote instruction so that students experience daily standards aligned lessons and adequate time to read and write at grade level and independent levels. So adequate practice time to become better readers and writers. We want to measure the effectiveness of our instruction in real time to make adjustment to practice. And we want to match student needs with the resources, both curricular and human, to support the development of the needed skills. And finally, to identify and produce student work that reflects rigorous standards. So I'm gonna give a nod to what Mr. Santry was talking about earlier, really aligning these initial assessments and benchmarks to recognize, determine what are students' strengths and weaknesses, and then address those so that everyone can be successful. Our second goal, aligned with the superintendent's big bucket item of cultivating climate and culture, and aligning with the teacher standards, standard 4 of professional culture, to ensure all students are provided a safe school environment to develop both a positive sense of self and connection to their community. So I have to confess, my school advisory council made fun of me a little bit that I had too many adjectives in this this goal. So I had to pare it down to be just straightforward and direct and hopefully measurable. So I thank them for that painful editing. And our strategic priorities here are to use several different resources we have, such as our second step curriculum, our responsive classroom protocols, the Tiger program that comes in December, and as Tim talked about, the behavioral health support team, which has also met a few times. And what is so interesting about that team is that, so you have a variety of resources, right? You have the guidance counselor, you have Miss Staples, who helps students take breaks throughout the day. You have the psychologist, you have interface, you have the social worker up in the middle school, we have our school engagement coordinator. So instead of the adult who recognizes the issue just sort of randomly reaching out and saying, oh, I think I will go for this assistance or that assistance for my student, instead it's all going to be streamlined through this behavioral health team. And most importantly, they're going to keep very accurate data on that so that we can track progress, we can track the number of issues, we can track where they go. So it's an exciting new opportunity. I didn't mean to sidetrack there, but it's really a very wonderful new resource that has come about as a result of this unfortunate circumstance that we find ourselves in with COVID. And finally, my third goal, which speaks to the superintendent's equity, access, achievement, and opportunity for all students, and to Standard 2 for teachers, teaching all students, is to provide specific, targeted, intense interventions by utilizing the data and progress monitoring to adequately support and improve student performance. And I really need to give a nod to Rebecca Hyde here again, because she helped me sort of hash out or wordsmith in terms of the state program for the interventions for students and the steps that we should take to create a blueprint for our school improvement, and then eventually get some professional development, hopefully via a grant, that we could have some implementation by 2021. And all of my goals are 2-year goals. All right, any questions for me? Thank you so much for your kind attention.
All right, we can turn it over now to Mr. Adams.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me here tonight. And I just want everybody to know that if I have to mute really quick, it's because my dog is running around and she might start barking. So this was an extremely complex process. I really want to thank Rebecca and Annika for helping me through some of the initial deep dive thinking. I have 3 goals. The first goal that I have is similar to it's the same goal as Heidi's. You have a copy of it, but it's also related to one of the big bucket areas that was identified. Need my glasses. Sorry. One of the big bucket areas for strategy for improvement. So transforming teaching and learning, but it has to do with literacy. We're going to be focusing a lot of our time, resources, and energy on improving student literacy at the primary school. But it's also ties into some of the superintendent goals, specifically 3 and 4 of the superintendent goals. iReady, IXL, some of the platforms that we're going to be using for assessment and data analysis for student progress. We just completed our DRA assessments, and we are currently working through our iReady assessments. Staff is going to be having some training on IXL. So you can see as you go through the buildings, we're all starting to align a lot of the tools that we're using and also the goals. Like Tim had said, really focusing on targeting the efficiency of what we do to move the district forward. My second goal is an SEL goal, falls under the equity access engagement bucket on the big bucket list. We've established the BHST teams, behavioral health, BHST teams. We have not met yet. Actually, our first meeting is Friday, and we will be looking at some student data at that point in time. The really important thing for me and staff in my building, I think for the students most importantly, is that this provides an opportunity for us to really track the supports that we put in place and not lose people, right? That was a not lose track of students, right? I think, that was a huge concern that we spent a lot of time on in the spring, especially during the remote sessions. Having a group of people, as Heidi described, it's basically the same group of people in my building. Being able to provide those supports and work with students and help parents, support parents, is going to be very helpful moving forward. We're also going to be continue to work on our PBIS model that we started last year. We're going to strengthen that model. We're going to revisit Ruler, not only revisit, but we're going to strengthen that model, especially based on some of the parent feedback, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and the staff identification that, knowing how students are feeling when they come in that day, was a real boost for what we were planning on doing, just having that feedback from this. The last one is communication. I know we've all been on a lot of committees and we've all been part of a lot of organizations, and communication is always one of those things that we can continue to improve upon. Mine is
Real life.
That's my house every minute of
I'm so
every
sorry.
day.
If the
Every
wind
minute of
blows or somebody drives down the driveway, it's all
Oh, yeah.
over. A lot of my communication is not only going to focus on just getting more general information out to not only parents, but staff members, but also communicating curriculum expectations, particularly the curriculum maps, the scope and sequence maps. I didn't put it in my school improvement plan, but it may be added at some point in time. I was really looking at trying to get some can-do statements posted for students and for parents. So that might be something I look at maybe in the second half of the year going into the fall. But communication is my third goal. My timeline, if you look at it, it's tight, and it's tight for a reason. I looked at this really strategically and from a perspective of a sense of urgency to try to really complete as many of the action steps as we possibly can before the end of this year. But I'm not naive. I know that some of these goals, especially the literacy goal, will take probably at least 2 years, if not 3. But I think, I just wanted to have that sense that this is important work and it needs to be completed, and it needs to be like a primary focus for our building moving forward. So please, if you look at my timelines and how you're going to do this in a year, I just wanted to explain the reasoning behind why I put the timelines that way. I've dedicated a lot of faculty time to do a lot of this work, faculty meeting time, structured faculty meeting time for each of these areas, or for at least 2 of the areas. It's aligned with Turkey Elementary School. So eventually when we can get to the vertical teaming phase, especially for literacy, that we can have dual meetings, or we can have meetings at the same time between schools, which I think is also really important. My next steps, I am definitely going to share this with my building leadership team. I did share this with my school advisory council. We do not have a meeting until next Monday, but we will go over it again, and I will absolutely take any input and any feedback that they have and work it into this plan moving forward. Any questions?
Questions? Committee members, any questions? Yes, Mr. Leighton.
Yes, this is Mr. Leighton, Brian Leighton. Thank you, Mr. Adams. I appreciate the goals. I like the advanced timeline. I think it's great to shoot for above and beyond and really shoot high and aim high. I love the literacy goal too. I think it's so important. We saw that as well at Turkey Hill, and we had some great conversations about the importance of literacy, but also that the timeline is going to be tough to get everybody there. We did have some good conversations too. I would consider thinking about the students who are already at grade level or beyond, that we keep pushing them. We had talked about that at Turkey Hill, that we really want to keep pushing all students to get to that next level and keep advancing, so we can even get more students to that advanced level as well. But thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
And now Mr. McGrath.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, thank you for having me. I'd also like to give a shout out to my school council as well, for their ongoing help. The first goal that I would like to talk about is a curriculum goal, and it's kind of a three-tiered goal where what I want to do is monitor the history curriculum changes that we went through last year. Mr. Stevenson and I worked through a complete reconfiguration of the history curriculum, where we wanted to introduce more student choice instead of having kind of just U.S. History 2. The thought process around the history electives was to break the history curriculum up into semesterized classes, allowing students to have more choice over their learning, which the hope would be if students were more engaged in the particular subject matter, where they had more choice on particular areas of history, you might get more engaging discussions and more engaging work. So I want to continue to monitor that as I go through the year, through my walkthroughs and my teacher evaluations, to see how those ongoing discussions are going. And I meet regularly with Mr. Stevenson through my department heads. But one of the reasons I want to monitor that as well is because I'm also looking at the English as well as the math curriculum to kind of revamp that as well. And because we're a little bit ahead with the history curriculum, what has worked for that and how that has impacted student learning, because the English one that I'll be working the champion on that one will be Julia Callahan, my department head. I'll be working very closely with her. One of the things we want to do with the English curriculum around the equity and access is around the canon and the books that we use in our English department. We've been using books that have been around for a while, and trying to get more diverse voices in the books that we use. So Julia and I have had in-depth conversations about that, and we feel that getting some new authors in the mix. We also have the Newsella program that we're very thankful to have at the high school, where we can just get different voices for students to hopefully relate to and just have a different perspective on discussions and moving forward. Not that the canon and the classics and the Huck Finns and Lord of the Flies, the Frankensteins, those have their place, there's no question. But, just having a diversity of authors where our students can relate to, whether it be female authors or, minority authors, I think that will be very helpful moving forward, so the students can kind of see and discuss a different voice in the classroom. So I'll be working very closely with Julia on that. And then that brings us to the math curriculum, where what we're looking, and I'll be the champion on that will be myself and Jen Miller, the math department head. we're looking at our math curriculum, because currently right now, the way we break up our math curriculum is that everyone has to pass, and this is a math core, this is a state requirement for math. You have to pass algebra, you have to pass geometry, and you have to pass algebra 2. Those are non-negotiables. That's math core. That's what everyone has to pass in order to be able to graduate. Our hope around the math exploration that we want to look into is there's an integrated 1, 2, 3 math pathway that would require the purchase of a book. Those can be expensive, so that's something we would have to plan for. So we're going to be looking into that this year, and I have to budget for that and have some conversations with the superintendent. That could be under curriculum adoption funds, but I have to plan for that. And the thought process around that is currently right now, some of the students are struggling when they get to Algebra 2. Algebra 2 is probably the most difficult course for students who are not in my math track, the students that are not going to be the engineers, or the students who aren't going to reach pre-calc or calc, those students who are going to be maybe my writers or whatever their pathway is going to be. Math is just a means to an end, excuse me. So the hope is to help students that are struggling with that Algebra 2 course. And with that 1, 2, 3 integrated math approach that Mass Core offers, you kind of work through the math curriculum, which is algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 in a 3-year cycle, which kind of can slow the curriculum down and make it work for students. Currently, what we're doing right now, especially for our special ed population, is we break it up into Algebra 1A, Algebra 1B, geometry, and then they go into Algebra 2. The thought process around that is if you give the students a really solid base in algebra, that they'll be able to handle Algebra 2. Other school systems I've talked to through the Mid-Watch Principal Program, they'll do an algebra, they'll do a geometry, and then they'll break up the Algebra 2. So there's a bunch of different pathways that people can take, but this integrated Algebra 1, 2, 3, I think will be helpful. And it might slow that Algebra 2 process down, because that's the class that significantly has an impact on some of the students who do struggle in math, because it's a difficult class. And Massachusetts, we're one of the leading curriculums in the nation, and so we want kids to pass Algebra 2, which is great. It's great to set the bar high, but that can be difficult for some students. So we certainly want to look at that and see if we can help out some of those students who math is not their strong suit. So those are the 3 areas that I'm looking at for curriculum. Certainly using department time, common planning time, having meetings with teachers on a regular basis, vertical teaming, and going through evaluation as observations. As I said, looking at that history curriculum, I think will help move the English curriculum forward as well, learning from that, and then as we try to revamp some of the English curriculums. That's about a 2 to 3 year goal. The reason I have 3 years is just because there could be some monies tied to that, and I need to work that through with the budget and make sure that we're on pace. So that's why it's more, I have that 3 year in there in case monies are tight in the next couple of years, and I have to work through the curriculum adoption piece. The second piece, the second goal for me is the social and emotional goal, and that is one in which I want to keep an eye on students through the behavioral health. The high school did a survey last year that was extremely helpful in having that data. And so my plan with this second goal is to monitor students, making sure that we have an environment that is inclusive and can support students, that celebrates differences and diversities through all the learning models that we're trying to navigate at the high school. So the plan that I have is the students who sort of tested in the medium to high range, I would like to retest the students at the end of this year to gather that data, to measure where we're at and where those students are at, to see if some of the things we've put in place have helped some of the anxiety. So I think when you have the base data that we had with the test last year, and then if I retest that student body that fell in the moderate to high range, that'll be a good gauge at the end of the year to see if some of the things that we implemented, and some of those examples of implementation would be, we We have our student support team that meets regularly, that meets bi-weekly. We have our behavioral health team that meets every 2 weeks. So both those meetings are on Wednesday morning and they just flip. So one week it'll be a behavioral health meeting. The next week it's the student support meeting. We're going to be supporting students, their social emotional needs through our guidance, the use of our school psych, our behaviorist, our BCBA. We have our social worker. Once Mrs. Millette is off her maternity leave as well, she'll be returning to the building. She is someone I lean on very heavily when it comes to this stuff. She is fantastic. I am very lucky to have that support in my building. Also working with, the school nurse, as well as the behavioral health council as well. And those are some of the things that I want to work through. Students have a daily check-in. Every single student has a daily check-in through advisory, even the remote students. That is something I want to start focusing on, where the advisory teachers are kind of doing, spot checks as we get midway through the quarter during advisory. Hey, how are things going? Do you need help? Is there a certain teacher that I can email? So with every teacher having access to all the students, even the fully remote students through advisory, that'll be another kind of a social emotional block where I want to have teachers kind of checking in with students just to see, engage where they are, and maybe help around grading time, help depending on the grade level when it comes to, with MCAS for sophomores, and then certainly, SATs and PSATs. Those will be good opportunities for teachers to kind of talk about that, during advisory. So, and I think the measurable piece will be at the end of the year when we resurvey those students. So monitoring those anxiety levels and seeing if some of the things that we have put in place has helped. I have also, for the past 2 years, I do not have my guidance team in advisories because they're down every single day checking in with students during the lunchtime. They have a table outside of the lunch area where they're constantly grabbing students. Hey, how are things going? What can I help you with? Right now, we're trying to follow up with all the seniors for their senior contracts because we want to make sure that every single senior is on track to graduate. So that's a great opportunity, for students to kind of get what they need, and making sure that both the students and the guidance team is on the exact same page, because we never want any surprises as we get to May, because it's very hard to fix a problem when it comes to May around graduation. You want to catch that certainly in October. And then the third goal it's the exact same goal that I have with Mr. Santry. We work very closely together. I have the utmost respect for Mr. Santry, and certainly working to align both the high school and the middle school schedule, I think will open up an awful lot of benefits. As Mr. Santry said, certainly having foreign language go down to some of the lower grades, I would be very excited to have that algebra opportunity at the 8th grade level, because currently the model we have, if a student is on the advanced track, they're going a lot of times directly into geometry because they're an advanced student, and they're kind of moving past that year of algebra because they're an advanced common core at the 8th grade level. But if we could have an algebra class, I think that'll help with that transition going directly into geometry. Then they'll get to if they're on the track, they can get all the way up to AP Calc or calculus in that advanced track. I think that would be something that would help with some of those gaps, and it also would cut down on students. Sometimes they're trying to double up where they're taking geometry as well as algebra their freshman year, and that can be a lot for a student to try to handle as a freshman. So I think aligning our schedules will be very helpful in a lot of different areas with the sharing of staff. So certainly want to work with Tim on that, work with his staff, and if some of my staff can help at the 8th grade level, and maybe some of his staff can help at some of the 9th, 10th grade levels, it just opens up a couple doors if we are able to align a couple more classes than we currently are. So, any questions?
Committee, Mr. Leighton.
Thanks. This is Brian Leighton. Thank you. I like the presentation, the goals. I like the idea of how we're aligning. Really, I should have mentioned it earlier too, with Turkey Hill and the primary aligning goals too. But I really like the alignment with the algebra class, the eighth graders. I think that's a great idea. Expanding more opportunities for advanced placement classes, because not every student can double up or want to. I did have a couple questions on the history and the math curriculum. With adding more history electives and more choices, would that put a higher class load on other courses? If there were more options for students, would that increase class sizes in other history classes or
Well,
other subjects?
The hope is it would allow students to take more history. I mean, that was the hope. If they have more choice, then they would be able to take, say, a history class as a fall elective. If it's a one semester, then maybe they could take a CAD class the second semester as opposed to a full year. The hope would be those particular students would have a little bit more flexibility and more choice by breaking up the history curriculum into semesterized classes. Not all of the classes are that way. We still have World History 9, which is a full year class, but as you get through, the hope would be as students, sophomore, junior, and senior year, they would be able to have more choice. I don't think it would put more stress on other classes. It's still the same number of sections per semester where students would have choice. I'm hoping I'm answering your question, Brian. Or
That's exactly what I was looking for.
but yeah, because we would have, if say Mr. McCougar or Mr. Stevenson, just name your history teacher, they'd be teaching a semester class in the fall, then they'd be teaching another class in the spring. And then that could line up possibly with a unified art class. So again, it allows students to have a bit more flexibility as opposed to being locked into a full year of history. They could probably more than likely get, a class they're looking for, whether it be ceramics or CAD or, you name your psychology class, that have some more options of trying to get some of those semesterized classes. It does make the schedule a bit more difficult to manage. Anytime you start to semesterize classes, nothing compares to trying to build a master schedule during a global pandemic. But it does make it does add a little bit of a Jenga puzzle piece to it when you are semesterizing. You got to make sure you're not doubling up and but that's an area of strength for me. I've been scheduling for a long time. When you have a full year course, you just put it there and it's just done. It makes it a little bit easier. But to me, it's worth the work because I think when students have more choice, you usually have more engagement. And when kids are more engaged, they're going to learn more. So I don't mind that work when it's going to help students learn.
All right, thank you. And then my second part was more to the math. And I think I might have a couple questions on the math part. I feel like it was a couple of years ago you came to the school committee and wanted to break up the algebra 1 and have it that 2 parts, and then the geometry, then the algebra 2. I didn't know if you had much data on that, if it wasn't working, and that's why it made sense to go to the integrated form.
We were going to see, I guess the problem, we're kind of a little bit in limbo because we were hoping that maybe if we had the algebra 1 class at the 8th grade level, that might solve some of the problems, because some of the issues we were running into was students on the higher track skipping and struggling with the algebra and then struggling when they got to algebra 2. The other piece to it is it's not always the special ed students that are struggling because they do get a good base. It is those students who might not qualify for special ed, but they're not super strong. There's not a disability in math, but they're just not super strong in math. So they get algebra 1, then they take geometry the second year, then they take algebra 2. One of the things that we're also looking at as well is that year where they get into geometry, because geometry is almost like a singleton. It's a very different class than algebra 1 and algebra 2. But when you're in the special ed track, you take the 1A, the 1B, algebra 2, then you take geometry. That's the track when you're in the special ed track. When you're in the regular CP track, you're taking algebra 1, geometry, and then algebra 2. Few years back, I came to the committee to talk about reducing the requirements from a 4-year to a 3-year. And the hope was those particular students I was just talking about that would take algebra, then geometry, then algebra 2, not on the special ed track. If they did struggle with algebra 2, they would get a second chance to retake Algebra 2 their senior year, and they would only need the 3-year requirement to graduate. The piece that I found when I became principal that I didn't like was that if a student struggled in Algebra 2, didn't pass junior year, so then you have the struggling student in math, they have to take Algebra 2 again their senior year. Oh, and by the way, you have to take another math course on top of it, even though you're not great in math, in order to meet the 4-year graduation requirements. I think you could probably guess, Brian, there wasn't a real high success rate on those students taking both those math courses together and passing. So as the principal, as the curriculum leader, I didn't like that, and I felt like that needed to be addressed. So that has certainly helped. But I am still seeing some students struggling with the Algebra 2. We do have a math enrichment course going this year to help fill those gaps because of the shutdown from last year. So we are running kind of an extra elective for students to help catch up on some of those math gaps. Math is something I keep a close eye on of all my classes, just because there are some students who they're very good students, but just math can be a struggle at the high school for some kids. It's a beast. Some kids it's a walk in the park, and other students just struggle with math. And I think in science, you have a lot more choices. You can go in different directions without, physics and chemistry. You can take other things, but with math, you're stuck with those Algebra 2 classes. So.
And I just had thank you. And then I just had one more question about
Sure.
the integration 1, 2, 3. I didn't know if they were very similar objectives in curriculum as the Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry, where we could possibly use the books that we currently have just to save on resources rather than buying new books.
The issue we have is the books we currently have are 20 years old. We could try, but I do think we've got they've had a good run. I'll put it that way. So I do think we need to kind of look at upgrading that at some point. But the good news is, because they are 20 years old, there's a lot of resources online when you Google it, because, there's a lot of YouTube videos and things. So, there's always a silver lining to everything. But I do think we can look at upgrading some of the math books, because they are pretty dated.
Thank
I would
you.
like Mrs. Miller could do a much better job at
Yeah, I guess
explaining
I
the
just
needs
didn't
of
know
the
if it
math.
was like kind of like if you were adding a stats course, you need new stats books, but it was like I didn't know if this course was going to align with any of the current courses that we already had.
We're looking at stats too. That's another option we would like to add. The hard part is just, I only have 5 teachers in the math department. So, but stats, I would love, we've had numerous discussions about adding a stats class, and there is a lot of motivation to do that. It's just every time we get down to it, I just don't have the staff to run. We have advanced mathematical decision making, which is a great class. It's kind of a hands-on math class, which is kind of measuring out how many tiles you need if you're going to tile your bathroom. It's a very good class for every day. When kids say, "Why do I need to use math?" That's a great class for that. But I think stats is another class I would love to be able to add, Brian. It's just every time we crunch the numbers, I just don't have enough staff to make it work. So I would love to at some point add a math teacher, but then that's a lot more expensive than a book. So.
Any other questions for Mr. McGrath? Ms. Shapiro?
Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. That was fantastic. I was just wondering, so you had talked about the Algebra 1A, 1B path. Would it be possible, like obviously not like very soon or anything, but potentially sometime in the future to have like an Algebra 2A, 2B kind of pathway? Because I'm sure there are students who can be successful enough in Algebra 1 and geometry, but I mean, having taken Algebra 2, it is definitely significantly difficult than some of the other classes that you have to take at the high school level. So is there a way to maybe break that up so that it's not so accelerated?
Yes, that is a fantastic question. The issue you run into is if you break up Algebra 1A and 1B, and then you break up Algebra 2 into Algebra 2-1 and Algebra 2-2, how do you get in geometry? Because you need to have that as well in order to graduate, because you need all 3. So the decision a few years back, before I even became the principal, was to really give them that base with the 1A, 1B, hope with a strong base that they'd be able to tackle Algebra 2. The other way that you can do that, and it's a great question, Ms. Shapiro, is that if you go with the integrated 1, 2, 3 math route, if you go that route, you have a lot more flexibility to kind of shift in and out because it is all 3 courses over a 3-year period. So you can slow it down. What you do have to also keep in mind when you're in that pathway is that they have to take MCAS sophomore year. So you have to make sure you're hitting what the MCAS needs right before that. But that's the whole reason why they have that integrated 1, 2, 3. So it's kind of morphing in and out of what you need, and you can adjust depending on the classes that you have. So it's an interesting model. I'm certainly going to lean on Miss Miller. She has, forgotten more math curriculum than I know. So I'm certainly going to lean on her. She is my expert, as well as my math department. I have an excellent math department. So, but that's one of the reasons why I want to look at this integrated 1, 2, 3 program, because it might help with that, and maybe slow that algebra 2 down, because that's where they struggle. And a lot of those algebra classes, they're supported geometry, and then they just get to that algebra 2, and it's a tough course, especially if you're not looking to go into math. Algebra 2 is a tough course.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Mr. McGrath.
Carol has a question.
I think Carol might have a question.
Oh,
Carol, sorry, I went back
No.
by you, Carol, sorry.
No, that's all right. I had a comment about all of the plans that I just wanted to make. And that was, it's really nice to see the consistency between all the schools with the template and how everybody's focusing in the same direction. And I also have to comment that I can hear the voice of the teaching and learning department. It is so important to have that for the vertical teaming from kindergarten right through the 12th grade, to have that piece. I can hear it in these plans, and I hadn't heard that before. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. Then we will move on then.
We would like for you to take a vote and approve all of the plans.
So I will take a motion to approve the 4 school improvement plans as presented. Ms. Shapiro.
This is Sophie Shapiro, and I move to approve the 4 school improvement plans as presented.
And a second? I can't say anything. Ms. Archambault?
This is Carol Ashambo, and I will second that.
A roll call. Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mrs. Archambault,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Bertrand.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is permission to post for student custodians.
So I'll invite Mr. Cassidy to address this one.
You're
Might
muted,
be
Mr.
muted.
Cassidy.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. This is Mike Cassidy. I'm the business manager and HR director. Tonight, the superintendent and I are proposing a continuation of a summer position for the school for the rest of the school year. It's a student custodian position. We are challenged at this point to find quality custodians to fill long-term sub positions that are open right now, and some of the positions that we're anticipating to be open. So after consultation with John Lander, we felt that adding student custodians at the end of the school day, or after school, I should say, for approximately 3 hours each day on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. Those hours that those student custodians address some of the basic custodial tasks, such as sweeping, emptying barrels. There may be some easier, low-risk tasks that we would like our student custodians to do, just to alleviate our custodial staff to respond and to address sanitizing of general areas within the building. So it's, I'm projecting that the cost will be about $13,833. If we have a good response from students, I can allocate about $2,800 of that on the COVID relief grant that we have. And the balance of the $11,000 after January 1st will be absorbed into the local budget. Once again, you're aware that there's been some staff turnover, so we do have a small pocket of money to fund this out of the custodial account due to the time that it's taken us to hire those positions. So it's a unique strategy for a unique time to address a safety need. But during our conversation, I just want to be clear. When the superintendent and I were talking to John Lunda, our students who will have proper safety equipment while they're doing these tasks after school for 3 hours a day will not positively be addressing or helping out in any potential COVID-related issue if one were to arise at a school. So I just want you to be clear. Our safety for employees is one of our top priorities in the district. Putting a student at risk, it would just be foolish. So I want to give you that assurance. They will not be responding to cleaning a classroom if one were to be exposed to someone who was infected with the virus. Hopefully that eases any anxiety that any committee member would have to that. They will be doing custodial work, and they'll be overseen by the senior custodian. So, so just so you know that. Does anyone have any questions around this proposed position for and once again, this is for this year only at this point in time.
Mr. Leighton?
I had a couple questions. One of them was, does this have to be negotiated with the union?
No, we're currently, it's a negotiated position already with the union. It will not have to be negotiated. It's already been accepted.
Thank you. And then another question I had was, can you give us any historical background if this position has been posted before? And then potentially, is this something that we could have in the budget so we could continuously have this opportunity for students and give them that kind of experience, that work experience?
I have no knowledge of this position being funded during a school year. I can consult with Mr. Wander around that. The idea of continuing this position or these positions, once again, this is a position per one position per building. We can certainly analyze that position for consideration for the FY22 budget. We can put it on the list. I mean, my opinion on it is that it provides a great bang for our funding. We can get a lot of work done, provide a little relief for our custodians to address some of our heavier duty custodial cleaning issues. COVID related or not, there's usually some response during the day. I just want to highlight this again. These positions are set up on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So it's 3 days a week. So obviously students are not in the building on Monday, and on Friday, they won't be working because the custodial staff will be thoroughly cleaning the buildings on Monday. But what I would like to do, if this is approved by the school committee, is take a look at the impact that these positions make. And I think that's part of the analysis I was kind of alluding to, and what kind of relief and that they provide to our regular staff, that they can respond to our regular cleaning duties. So we'll put it down on the list. I'll make sure it's the first thing. I'll make sure it's the first thing on the whiteboard. Okay.
No, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. It's we need the help. It provides a budget friendly alternative, and I thank the union also for working with us on getting these positions to post them. And the schools are one of the safest places. Everybody's in masks, and kids need the jobs and to help support their families. So I think it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Kelly?
Could this also be something that could possibly be done in conjunction with the Achieve program later on down the road if the need is there for more help?
I think that's a great idea. We can propose that to Ms. Hanscom. She was aware of these positions and the recommendation going forward to the school committee. Once again, it's setting it, for that program. It's finding the right student with the right skills to be successful. So I think if it's a match, it certainly can be considered. So thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for that idea.
Any other questions? All right, then I will take a motion regarding permission to post for the student custodians. Mr. Leighton.
Hi, I'd like to make a motion to approve the permission to post the student custodians positions as described.
Second. Ms. Shapiro.
This is Sophie Shapiro, and I second that motion.
Roll call vote. Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mrs. Archambault,
Yes.
Mr. Layton.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Bertrand.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the election of voting and alternate delegate to the MASC Delegate Assembly. So this really comes into play potentially at the annual conference. It's actually something we normally do when we vote. When we voted all of our other subcommittees, somehow it didn't happen then. So often it is the chairperson who is the delegate, and then one of the other members as a backup again. surrounding the MASC annual conference. Does anybody have any questions about it? Ms. Archambault?
I believe I got something in the mail that said it was going to be on the 7th of November virtually. And that in the morning, there was a keynote speaker that anyone could go to. And in the afternoon was the delegate meeting, I believe.
So with that being said, any discussion? Does anyone want to make any nominations? Mr. Leighton?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to, or I guess nominate for the voting delegate, Ms. Bertrand, and the alternate delegate, Ms. Archambault, for the MASC Delegate Assembly.
Ms. Archambault, are you good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Then are there any other, does anyone else want to make a nomination? If not, I'll accept a second. Ms. Shapiro?
This is Sophie Shapiro, and I second that nomination.
All right. And we're ready for a roll call vote.
Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Archambault,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bertrand.
Yes. Thank you. And now we are ready for the annual reports for Sizer and Parker schools.
This is just meeting an obligation. The schools have to provide an annual report to the districts that send students. So you have both the Sizer and the Parker School annual reports. I would just need someone to make a motion to accept these reports.
Is there someone willing, Ms. Archambault?
I would be happy to make a motion to accept the annual reports from the Parker Charter School and the Sizer Charter School.
Is there a second? Ms. Kelly?
This is Laura Kelly. I second that motion.
Roll call vote. Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Archambault,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bertrand.
Yes. Thank you. And now on to our next item, which is a discussion item, survey feedback summary.
So at this point, I am going to invite Mrs. Scott and Mrs. Hyde to review the summary. As you know, that we put out a survey to all families, to students, and to all of our staff. This was our first cycle, if you will, to solicit that feedback. And again, we will be taking a look at the feedback to see what adjustments and improvements can be made. And we will be soliciting feedback again in approximately 3 to 4 weeks. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Scott.
This is Annika Scott, the Interim Director of Teaching and Learning, and I invite Rebecca and all the principals to join at any time with comments. As Dr. Burnham said, we sent out surveys. We asked for 3 perspectives. So we sent surveys to the students, the teachers, and the parents, because we know that we value all 3 of those perspectives, and we know that they can be different. So the first concern we had was for safety. So we put those slides up front. And we also divided the data by school in a lot of cases. So you'll see here, the question was, what is your comfortability with the safety measures and protocols which are currently in place? The surveys, any of these rating questions, the 1 is on the lower end. So this one in particular, a 1 would be not comfortable, and the 5 is a higher end. And in this case, it was very comfortable. So you can see the averages of how currently, at the time of the survey, students, staff, and parents are feeling at the high school. Same data at the middle school. We put the weighted averages there. Turkey Hill. And finally, the primary school, we didn't survey students at the primary school, so you'll see that that data is not here. Next is communication, and this is actually a district slide. We put all schools here. Please rate the level of communication between school and home. 1 being ineffective and 5 being very effective. We also asked the types of communication that people have found supportive, and also what areas of communication can be improved. And in the case of communication, we felt that this could be a district slide. We saw similarities across the schools for these questions. So the following slides pertain to Lunenburg High School. And again, Mr. McGrath, feel free to jump in at any time. For students, this shows we had 113 responses. They were 80.5% hybrid students and 19.5 remote, and it was a pretty even representation of all 4 grades, and similar for the parents with 117 responses. The staff feedback, we received approximately 50% of the staff responses. So the question here, please describe your hybrid or remote learning experience, with 1 here being very difficult and 5 being a great experience. And for teachers, we had asked about teaching experience learning. Next, we had asked for, we sorted according to hybrid and remote models, and we had asked for the strength of each model, and then the challenges or barriers that people faced. So we thought it was important to show the feedback from students, parents, and staff, as it is, different in some cases. And we did pull out themes. Of course, we had a lot of feedback to go through for the open-ended questions. Certainly, these are the themes that emerged, and you'll notice as we go through the slides that there are conflicting opinions. So you'll see in some of the columns, both ends of the spectrum. Definitely themes as well across students, parents, and staff. For example, you'll see that the value of in-person instruction, is clear, which I think is a real compliment to our teachers. And also, we know none of these models are ideal, but something that's coming up is that people appreciate the flexibility with work communication, work completion, and being able to manage time, learning those time management skills. In the remote model for the high school, these are some of the strengths that we saw as themes. Again, many of these are similar to the hybrid model. Liking the flexibility and independence, but appreciating the live teaching through the meets and interacting with their peers and with teachers. As far as the barriers go, for a hybrid model, these were some of the themes in terms of barriers. Certainly there have been some technology and Wi-Fi problems. We've been addressing those as they've come up, helping students in particular with getting devices and hotspots in some cases, but you know, day to day in the classroom, there can be some challenges there as well. So we see that coming through and we'll continue to address that. Missing out on some of the direct instruction on the remote days is a challenge for everybody. And you'll also see pretty commonly across all of the schools for teachers, the overwhelming amount of planning time that working in these models requires is just an immense task for them. And we do appreciate.
I would echo that. There's just an awful lot of planning, and then it can compound itself if there is a technological issue, because then it throws the plans off, then you're constantly readjusting. So, you know, sometimes technology isn't always friendly, so it can sometimes compound itself.
For the remote learning model challenges and barriers, definitely seeing a challenge with, you know, students trying to learn across a screen and teachers working to engage students across the screen. You know, some feel the discussions are more difficult. Some students hesitate to participate through the screen where they might live. The teachers trying to respond certainly in a timely manner, but it's definitely evident that they receive a large amount of emails and messages through Google Classroom on the student work that they're working to respond to. But that's, in addition to the planning time, something that's really requiring a lot of time from teachers.
And then some of the difficulty for teachers too is if the screen is not turned on, it's hard for teachers to gauge if the student is actually understanding. A lot of times teachers are using visual clues to see if a student is understanding what's being taught. So, you know, we've recommended in protocols that we certainly want students to have their cameras, you know, their cameras should be on. You know, it helps the educators kind of assess if the student is struggling and might need some, you know, repeating of the lesson or repeating of the activity.
This question, actually, Miss Millett, our school social worker, helped us come up with just in terms of the school year, how are you managing levels of stress and feeling overwhelmed, feeling those were the appropriate terms. And the 1 and the 5 are 1, this is really hard, and 5 would be managing well. We're seeing a lot of the positive feedback here in terms of what opportunities have helped Lunenburg High School students feel connected with other peers and teachers. how can we better support the social emotional experience? We know that's important in addition to academic experience. And then definitely finding out how we can better support the teachers' social emotional experience as well through this important work. We had asked if there were particular platforms at each school that students and teachers found useful, and if parents had heard through their student that were useful. So you'll see at the different schools some similarities and some differences. Here is the high school. I know that many are using video recordings of their lessons, so that you know, something like a Screencastify or recording in Google Meet allows teachers to speak to students directly through video, and they can also record their screen at the same time. Some of the platforms that the principals talked about are here as well, and some of these tools are brand new. In fact, Google Meet introduced brand new features today, including breakout rooms, and well, today in Lunenburg, they opened up breakout rooms, being able to poll students and being able
That
to.
is one of the challenges, trying to keep up with all of the revisions. I can't thank Annika and Rebecca enough, because that would be as trying to manage a building and then trying to keep up with all the updates that happen at Google. It's again, another plug for the teaching and learning positions. That is essential when you're trying to run a building. So it is difficult to keep up with all the different upgrades that are happening constantly.
On that note, yes, the other addition to Google Meet today was the attendance feature, and that's been a real challenge at the different schools. We need to take attendance, you know, with the students who are live in front of us and who are remote, and we don't want to use too much class time having to take attendance. So for the middle school, Mr. Santry, feel free to jump in anytime. We had 100 student responses. Again, similar breakdown of hybrid and remote, and somewhat even distribution across grade levels. Parents as well. Had about a 70% response from staff. And these are some of the strengths for the hybrid model that surfaced at the middle school. You'll notice that many of them are similar to the strengths we saw at the high school. We see the classes going out for those math breaks all the time, and kids walking outside. The smaller classes is another piece across these models that, in particular, the hybrid model coming up as a strength in all the schools. Teachers report they're able to build positive rapport with students in those smaller classes.
Wanted to call out the nods to teachers by both students and parents. Teachers really matter so much. And they're very well called out by both students and parents. I know it's a daunting task every day for teachers. And we hope they can hear that voice coming through from their students and the parents.
100%. And a compliment to them that, you know, the in-person time or the being able to connect in any way is there. So this is for the remote. Some of the strengths, people are appreciating being able to learn new technology, but at the same time, it's part of what makes it overwhelming to learn new platforms and have to use new platforms, and really in very often having to recreate, you know, a lot of what you would have done in the past. In terms of barriers for the hybrid model, again, some of the technical difficulties, continuing to work on, you know, making sure we take care of confusion where we can. Helping to motivate students, especially on the, you know, the remote days when they are behind the screen. It's certainly a challenge to teach the entire curriculum in these two models, which, you know, the state is asking us to do. And again, at the middle school, the large amount of prep for the staff, responding to emails. Kids sometimes feeling a little overwhelmed as well with the trying to keep up with all of the requirements that they now are often keeping track of online. Some of the middle school remote challenges are listed here. I know the online assessment piece has come up from many teachers, figuring out, you know, how to even give an assessment some of the time, how to juggle when to give an assessment with the hybrid model and then remote, you know, giving it across the screen. Students sometimes feeling distracted at home. As far as stress at the middle school goes, again, this was 1, this is really hard, and 5, managing well. It's interesting to see what students at the different schools felt were the activities that help them feel supported.
Mass
And
breaks,
connected.
lunch and specials. That's what they like about coming to middle school.
You know, and definitely, how can we better support? You know, there were some requests like, let us change seats more at lunch. I mean, that's one of the safety protocols that we have in place for them not to change seats, and we need to keep them apart. And so some of the feedback shows frustration with elements that we can't change, but we want to make the best of.
What I liked about these surveys, Annika, is they put my mind at ease about certain things around student safety, that the kids are feeling safe in my building with the protocols we put in place. Parents are feeling good about that also. And then it kind of just reinforces what I knew already, is that my teachers are extraordinary. They're working extraordinarily hard. They're making relationships with students. They're pushing the curriculum forward, and they're communicating well with students and parents. So I appreciated these surveys and the information that we got. No, we're not perfect, but we'll continue to try to improve and move forward.
Some of the middle school platforms, which again, some being seen across the district and some kind of specifically used at the middle school. I thought it was impressive to read, you know, some of the platforms we offered trainings on, and some of these are teachers found and learned on their own. Turkey Hill. Mrs. Champagne's free to jump in. We had, again, a similar breakdown, hybrid and remote responses, and across grade levels. Teacher responses, we had about 50%. and strengths at Turkey Hill. I enjoyed reading the authentic student comments that were written on all these surveys, in addition to the comments from the adults. And again, coming through loud and clear is that students appreciate their teachers. In remote, and then barriers. Some of the things that are mentioned here as barriers, we've already worked out in particular cases. Like confusion, for example, about when to join meets. I think some of that occurred at the beginning of the year, but now that we have routines in place and it's a little more clear, it's become easier. Certainly for staff, again, juggling both the cohorts simultaneously and just making sure they are responding to their students in addition to all the planning. Definitely with some of the younger students mentioning finding that quiet space to work. I think some of the younger kids who have younger siblings who might be making noise at home, I saw that appear a number of times, especially at the lower grades. As far as stress level goes, again, this is really hard, and managing well would be a 5. I think it will be important as we survey moving forward to compare the data as the year goes on to see what things that, you know, we are able to adjust and make better, and hopefully levels of stress coming down.
Yeah, I really want to chime in on that, especially for our staff who feel overwhelmed by the amount of planning and preparation, right? Hoping that that settles down, that as we develop the routine, that people start to feel better about that.
Again, a lot of the social time coming through as supportive here at Turkey Hill too. And for teachers, you know, just being understanding, we will continue to be understanding with them, looking for areas where we can possibly reduce, you know, workload and keep communicating. Turkey Hill platforms, here's where you'll start to see the iReady come in, and Epic for books they've been using across both schools. The primary school, again, we did not survey students, but we had a good amount of feedback from parents and teachers. About 50% of the primary staff responded. Strengths at the primary. Again, you know, a lot of these students, kindergarten level, first grade, it's their first time coming to school. So, you know, they're definitely, or full day school anyways, and they're definitely still establishing routines and getting used to everything, but very excited to be there from what I read. And it's nice to even, you know, observing the remote classes. is awesome to hear the voices coming through the screen. Kindergarten, 5 and 6 year olds talking to their teacher, talking to each other. It's exciting. As far as challenges go, at the primary and elementary, at the primary school, they're using iPads, as you know. So that's a new level of tech challenges, because it's, the motor skills, trying to get the kids to work through the iPads and then learn. We had a number of different logins for different platforms, which was out of our control, but getting them logged into the different apps is a challenge. And teachers sometimes creating work on a Chromebook and then needing to have the child complete the work on an iPad, and it might look different. So we're working on that, helping everybody get used to it. Couple of our primary remote classes are on the larger side, so working on they've been doing a great job using small groups, but everybody's still getting used to it. Also, the sending materials home, we have sent materials home already, and we can continue to do that as appropriate.
Oh yeah, Annika, that's starting to happen on a more frequent basis. We're scheduling days for that to happen, especially moving forward for some of our remote students, because they're going to need more materials for the second quarter as far as manipulatives go. So the teachers are setting up distribution days.
Great. And I know we've talked about creating virtual book rooms, for example, and we are, offering a training on that, but holding that paper book in your hand too is, valued by many. So we want to make sure we can give kids access to books they can hold as well. Stress levels here. And activities. Again, there were many comments directed at teachers being supportive, and then, on the other side of the coin, wanting to access the teachers more often is a frustration in these models. But teachers still needing, support from and getting support from each other. We saw that coming through as a theme as well, that they're really colleagues supporting each other, which is great. Some of these platforms are brand new this year, or just were used in Q4 and now are being, used at another level this year. So it's a lot of getting used to. Some of them are excellent, giving us some excellent data, and some are really engaging for students. Some of the virtual lessons teachers are taking advantage of are excellent. So we had asked a couple of questions in the survey. Well, one was, how can we better support and improve teaching and learning? We asked of all three. And then in a lot of the final comments that we allowed people to leave, the themes were the same. So this was the summary of both those questions and how we might be able to adjust to better support and improve teaching and learning. But here you'll see an example of where there's a number of people, looking for one thing and a number of people looking for the opposite. So We're going to consider the student experience, the teacher experience, and the parental concerns as we make our adjustments. And this is my favorite slide that we wanted to end on. You know, these are actual quotations from the survey instead of summaries, because woven throughout the data were these comments that showed the positive experience that so many students are having. And I thought it was, we all thought it was important to show some of these comments. They may not have been a specific answer to a question, but they definitely got them in there. We took these from throughout all of the surveys at all the different schools. And this is the final slide, so I don't know if anyone has questions on the summary.
So committee members, questions? Ms. Archambault?
Oh, we can't.
You're muted, Carol.
Sorry. I don't really have a question, but I think it's more of a comment. This was very complete and very well done. And I'll be curious to see how it's used as you're moving forward, and what, you know, to see the changes as time goes on. It's an awful lot of work to put all of this together. And but I think it should be very, very helpful.
And I know one other thing that's been happening, I know we summarized here, but if we noticed a particular issue that we could go and address with an individual or a parent, I know Juliana was making phone calls home today based on some of the survey results, and you know, we might go and address the teacher if there's an issue that we can solve right away. So we're working with the results in those ways as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work, everyone working on this. It's great to get a visualization of some of the comments. I think back, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Burnham, but was there once a discussion that there would be possible Zoom meetings per building with some of the parents? I just didn't know if that was still something that would take place later on down the road, where they'd be able to get their comments more in a live setting.
We will be able to continue with some Zoom meetings for parents. We'll be having them, you know, these conversations with staff as well. I don't know that we will host a Zoom meeting immediately following every single survey that we do this year, because if we're not seeing change in trends in the data, we may not have anybody attending some of the Zoom meetings. But I think, you know, for this first round, for sure, it makes sense to share these results out. So this is already going to be posted on our website, and the principals certainly can share this information with the families and the students in their building, and the staff, of course. And there's just a need for ongoing conversation around some of this, and sometimes having that opportunity to have two-way dialogue with families, parents, guardians. You know, it gives us an opportunity to get some clarity around some of the comments that might have been made in the context of the survey. You know, clearly there are things that we want to take a close look at and figure out ways in which we can, you know, implement maybe some new resources. You know, the stress levels, you know, most parents seem to indicate that they're managing okay. Clearly it's a different story for the parents at the primary school, and they have younger children, and it's a lot to juggle. You know, if there are things that we can do to better support them. I think, you know, the staff clearly, there's a lot of stress amongst the staff, and that's really truly impacting their overall experience, I think. Some of the concerns around safety too, I think, you know, we're continuing to address and alleviate concern. You know, we talked about the work that we're doing around HVAC at Turkey Hill, additional air purifiers and, you know, walkthroughs at the building, air quality tests, etc. Hopefully over time, teachers will continue to see that we're in good shape with that building, and that hopefully will alleviate some of the stress that they're feeling. I know that, you know, it's a lot at the high school, particularly because our teachers at the high school are prepping and juggling five classes a day, not all the same prep. So it's a challenge, no doubt about it. And it has been stressful. And they have been, you know, trying to implement things that they have just recently learned. That's stressful all in itself. Even if we were in the normal non-COVID context, if you provide new materials to teachers and you provide the training, and then they have to start to implement, it's stressful. There are a lot of stressors that our staff are dealing with. You know, and we'll continue to work with our Behavioral Health Advisory Council to find ways to support and relieve some of that stress and anxiety that they're carrying. Aside from the feeling of being very overwhelmed and overloaded, trying to manage all of the prep and the delivery and connecting with students and following up with emails, and it's a lot. It's a significant shift from the norm, and it's a shift from last spring. You know, so it's to be expected that this is a difficult period of time for everybody as we start to, you know, find our way through. I think the thing that I hope that the staff sees and hears through this data is that there's an awful lot of support for the work that they're doing. It is appreciated. It's appreciated by students. It's appreciated by parents. So you know, yes, as Mr. Santry had said earlier, is it perfect? No. Are people indicating things that are difficult or challenging or things that they would like to see improved? Absolutely. We made a commitment that we were going to look at this feedback and have conversation around ways in which we can make adjustments and continue to improve with the work that we're doing. It's hard. I think, you know, it's my experience anyway that teaching, it's not what you do, it's who you are. So when there's a critique of things that aren't going well, it's really hard for teachers not to take that personally. You know, and when you're exhausted and overwhelmed and stressed out, any feedback that would be, you know, perceived as a critique, it's hard to hear. But I really hope that in the coming days and the conversations that continue to happen at the building level, district-wide drop-in sessions with me, that teachers, you know, we have to reassure them that they're working hard. Everybody recognizes that they're working hard, and there are just some things that we need to talk about and see if there are ways to improve. And it's not a personal critique. It's an overall, you know, model critique. And again, it's really hard as an educator to separate yourself from that sometimes. But we're going to continue to do what we can to support everybody, and, you know, improve the experience where we can. But those are definitely, it's concerning, the stress level of the staff. It's very concerning.
And feedback, I mean, flipping that was, that portion regarding staff, yes. And hopefully around implementation, the students, because that's why we're here. So, their experience and maximizing their experience and parent experience for our students, our younger students, whose parents really are partners in education in this piece. Because it was clear in looking at some of the data that parents and students had some similar feedback, particularly around getting more or maximizing face-to-face interaction. So hopefully that can move forward as there's assessment of how to begin to implement, any ways to improve the feedback or maintain, if it was positive feedback, maintaining it or building on it. When would you still be looking at like a 4-week or so survey again?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So then looking at ways to evaluate, that would happen, I would think, in the next week or so, and then giving more time to see how any shifts or changes, how they are received.
Sure.
How they work.
So I think Annika has already, indicated that some of the feedback that we're getting, it can be addressed really quickly. We can resolve a challenge that teachers are feeling. As an example, the primary school teachers have laptops, but the students have iPads. As they're prepping their work on their laptop, it doesn't really appear the same on their iPad at home as it does on the laptop. So, we are having a conversation about getting iPads in the hands of the primary school teachers so that as they're prepping work on their Chromebook, they can look themselves on an iPad to see what the students will see. And they can make adjustments and improve the student experience on the other end because they can see themselves before they even share with the students what this is going to look like and if there are adjustments that they can make to make it better or easier on the student end of things. That's just one example. The last 6-8 weeks, it's been a constant flow of communication. Mr. Cassidy and I have very regular communication and meetings with the leadership of the teacher union, as an example. We are constantly, hearing what teachers may need and finding ways to, get them what they need or provide them additional information that might alleviate some concern, et cetera, et cetera. It's just been firing on all cylinders, and we are, all of us, I think, I speak for the entire leadership team, doing our best to respond to student needs, parent needs, and staff needs as they're coming forward to us. We're trying to resolve issues to, help families the best we can, support students the best we can, and absolutely support our teachers the best we can, because ultimately they're the face-to-face interaction with students every day. And that's the most important thing that we do, with the exception of making sure that everybody's safe when they come to school. So far, so good. It's late October and we're still in session. I think we're doing well. I think it's a testament to everybody's hard work and effort and perseverance and resilience. Again, this is hard for everybody. And the hope is that over time, with continued adjustment and support, that it will become easier for everybody. We'll never be perfect. It will never be perfect, but we'll do the best we can to continue to improve.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? All right. Then, thank you to everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
So now, continued discussion regarding update to Q2 change requests.
Yep. So as you know, we put out the forms to parents, anybody that was seeking a change in their learning model for Q2. At the primary school, there were a total of 16 change requests, mainly a change from remote to hybrid. So we've got kiddos who are going to be coming back to the campus, which is, great news. At the pre-K level, we've got 1 student. Kindergarten, we have 2. Grade 1, 4, and grade 2, 8 students who will be coming back to the school campus. We're excited to see them. We did have 1 change request at the primary school at the kindergarten level to go from hybrid to remote. At Turkey Hill, there were a total of 10 requests. All of them were at grades 4 and 5. All of them were from remote to hybrid. Again, more students coming back to campus, which is great news. At the middle school, there were a total of 20 requests. The change from remote to hybrid, 6th grade, 8 students, 7th grade, 7 students, 8th grade, 5 students. And the change from hybrid to remote, we have 1 6th grader and 2 8th graders who are gonna leave the hybrid model and go remote. At the high school, there were 16 requests. The change from remote to hybrid at grade 9, 3 students, grade 10, 6 students, grade 11, 1 student, grade 12, 5 students, and 1 student requesting to make the move from hybrid to remote in the 9th grade. So overall, the significant shift really is more kiddos coming to campus. We took a look at bus ridership numbers. There seem to be spaces available on most buses. I can tell you that bus routes 3 and 4 are pretty full. We are providing the information on the change requests to D-Bus. It's possible that we may have to make some adjustments to routes. Some kiddos might be assigned to a different bus number as a result of a change in a route. But we believe that, we'll be able to make adjustments and accommodate these additional kiddos that are coming back to the campus. Any questions?
I think it was well put out that this would be the only opportunity to do this. So that was good, and it sounds like manageable numbers, which is
Very much
a good thing as well.
Yep. And like I said at the last meeting, certainly through the remainder of the year, we will, on a case-by-case basis, evaluate requests for a change in learning model. It's just that we won't be putting out each quarter an all call for all parents to potentially make a change. That in itself, I think, will be much more manageable on a case-by-case basis. And even the Department of Ed has put out guidance that, originally their recommendation was that you try to make those changes happen in a 3 to 4 week period. And now they're making some adjustments to their recommendation that it may be a 4 to 6 week turnaround to make an adjustment in a learning model assignment for a student, because it impacts the bus, because it may impact scheduling into classes where cohorts are full. You know, we do have some classes in the district on a cohort at a grade level where the cohort is full. We really couldn't put any more students in because physically we don't have the space in a classroom to add more students and keep them 6 feet apart. So again, I know that this was a change from our original proposed plan. But again, I think that this provides us better flexibility in terms of being able to provide stability in our planning, in our model, in our teacher assignments, student classroom assignments to teachers. So hopefully this is beneficial to the kiddos as well.
No other committee, no questions or other comments? Thank you. Then public comment we're up to, which is open to anything that the school committee governs. And I'm looking to see. I am not.
Wendy, Megan Arnold has her hand raised.
Sorry, I'm trying to scroll.
It's okay, Wendy. I can only imagine how much fun this is trying to navigate all of it.
There's a lot of people on here. That's
which is good.
Thing.
Yeah.
So yes,
I just want to start by saying I want to thank everybody for all that you're doing. I know how hard this is.
Do you mind
I know how hard.
your address? Sorry about that.
Oh, sorry. Megan Arnold, 105 Hemlock Drive. Thank you. I know how hard this is for everybody. I know how hard it is on teachers, staff, students, parents, across the board. This blows for everyone. I think that's the only thing that we can probably all agree on. I want to reiterate what Kate had to say from the parent perspective about when I saw the discrepancy between teachers' level of concern with cleanliness versus parents and students' level of concern with cleanliness. That was a big red flag for me. And the reason is because I get all my information from a student, which most of us know are not the most reliable people to get information from. So I would really like to see that worked on. Because if the adults in the building are not feeling like it's up to par, I tend to believe that more than I believe my children, who, because the adults are more aware of the dangerousness of this. And kids are gross and don't want to wash their hands or wear masks or do any of those things. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. The second thing I'd like to say is I also think it is incredibly important that the teachers' needs and well-being be one of your top priorities, that it should be equally as important as the needs of your students. Most teachers that I know, not only in this district, but I'm a teacher, so all of my friends are teachers, my husband's a principal, all of his friends are teachers, they are about to break. Because this is a lot, because they don't feel like they can accurately get to their kids. They feel like they're being expected to do two full-time jobs at one point in time. And we are expecting them to do the impossible and to do it well and gracefully and beautifully and all that. And nobody's capable of that. So I really think that their mental well-being should be a top priority for you. Another thing on this that I noticed that was somewhat of a concern for me was the primary school using Lucy Calkins apps, because she herself just recently came out stating that she needs to update all of her information to match it with scientifically based reading programs. Her program has been disproven time and time again. And, I think it's something around like 60% of fourth graders are reading below grade level. I think that that's really should be a big push of what we should be doing to focus on as just something, not COVID related, just education related, that I'm hoping that, we're looking to do more, data-driven education versus just because she's been there for 30 years doesn't mean she's got the best information. Yeah, but that's what I wanted to say. So, thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna see if I have any other comments.
So I just want to jump in and offer one thought relative to the cleanliness of the building. Not that, we still are going to have dialogue with the staff, but I can give you some insight into what I do know. I do know that at Turkey Hill, there continues to remain concern about the HVAC. And again, that's ongoing. We're continuing to provide data and information that indicates that, at least right now, we're in good shape. That's not an issue. However, teachers are going to continue to have concern about that. And I can tell you, coming from the high school, the concern was around sweeping floors. And as you know, we've been short-staffed with custodians in recent weeks. And the priority for them to focus on was the disinfecting of the building as opposed to the sweeping of the floor. And that's why we brought before you this evening the permission to post for student custodians. The student custodians now will sweep floors and empty barrels again, so that the custodians can maintain their time and focus on disinfecting the building. So hopefully once teachers see that the floors are swept every night, they will feel better that the building is being cleaned. It's very difficult to provide visual evidence that the building has been disinfected because you can't see that. So again, there might be other concerns that we will uncover relative to that portion of the data in that survey. But those are the things that I can tell you that we are well aware of and we are already working to address. So, thank you.
I'm doing one more look on, make sure I get any other public comment. All right, I do not see any, so we will move to our reports. Athletic Advisory, Mr. Leighton.
We have not met.
And Finance Committee, Ms. Archambault.
The Finance Committee has met twice since our last meeting. On October 8th, Dr. Burnham and Mr. Cassidy met with them to share the budget report that we had heard at our October 7th meeting. And they continued to review warrant items for the special town meeting that evening. On October 15th, the public hearing for the warrant items for the special town meeting was heard. The only school-related item was in the capital plan for the air conditioning in the administrative area at the Turkey Hill Elementary School. And of course, there is a piece about the TC Passios group presenting at special town meeting. The capital plan was recommendation by the Finance Committee was deferred to the town meeting. And they will meet again on October 29th.
Thank you. Policy Subcommittee.
We have not met yet.
And PTO.
The PTO has not met since our last meeting. The next meeting is going to be on November 9th.
Excellent. And school councils, although I feel like, yes, I think many of them met this week. I suspect that school improvement plans were a large part of those, but anyone who met. Did primary meet? No, Mr. Adams said they were meeting.
We're meeting next Monday.
Yes. And Turkey Hill, Mr. Leighton, yes.
We met, like you said, most of it was talking about refining the school improvement plan. We did, some parent concerns were brought up about substitutes, making sure that we had enough substitutes, that we paid them well enough, that we were getting a quality group of substitutes to come in, and that we had some, because the concern was obviously if we had to shut down and go all remote because we didn't have subs. One idea a parent had was partnering with one of the local health, maybe hospitals, to get some of the rapid COVID tests for staff who are interested, to get tested earlier or get the results sooner. But obviously that can be a challenge. We also talked about the Title I tutors and how they were going through their testing, and they're hoping to work and identify those students and get working with those students that need those resources. We talked about some of the remote struggles, and then also the new behavioral health support team for students with social and emotional needs.
Middle school.
The middle school council met yesterday, and Mr. Santry relayed that the students have had a smooth start, and they are very glad to be back in the building. The kids have been 100% with their mask compliance. The reduced numbers around the school takes some getting used to. Where you used to see a big group of kids, now you're seeing a very small group, but that's coming along. And we reviewed the school improvement plan. And the next meeting will be on November 30th.
High school.
I don't believe we've met. I'm going to be in contact with people from the high school to figure out when the next meeting is.
Thank you. And capital planning. Capital planning actually met yesterday, and we're preparing to begin hearing presentations from the different town departments. And yesterday was actually looking at what defines a capital item, and we voted to revamp that because $10,000 was the threshold before, and that's actually a little bit lower now to be considered a capital expenditure versus being absorbed in the budget for in the regular operational budget. So so that number was brought up to 30,000, and also anything or what extends the life of an item for at least 5 years. So that was really it. And getting some next dates on our agendas to hear presentations, which will begin in November. And our next meeting is November 10th. I had to think about that. And wellness advisory.
We have not met.
Paxel.
That has not met.
TCP Building Design Committee.
We have not met since the last school committee meeting, but we are meeting tomorrow at 5:30. I think the design is getting really close, so it'd be a cool meeting to check out.
Lifelong Learning Advisory has not met as well. So topics for future discussion, committee members, any topics you would like to see covered in future meetings?
No.
All right. Then we are actually going to move to executive session. Dr. Burnham, should we adjourn first?
Yeah, you can make the motion to move
adjourn.
into executive session from which you won't return.
We won't return. Okay. So we will be moving into executive session, not to return back into public meeting to conduct strategy for sessions in preparation for negotiation with union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining or contract negotiations with union personnel, not to return to public meeting.
All right. Mrs. Bertrand, where would we find the Zoom link for that?
That was a question I had for Dr. Burnham.
Okay.
Because I thought I had seen it, and
I can create one and send one to you right now. I need to log off first, though.
or should I have done that?
Well,
Yeah, you were thinking I was going to, and I wasn't thinking about that. That's my bad, guys. I will text a link, everybody.
Okay.
Sometime in a few
I'll
minutes.
make
So should we
a motion.
motion? Thank you.
Make a motion to go to executive session and adjourn immediately after.
Is there a second? Second, Ms. Kelly.
I second that.
and roll call. Ms. Shapiro,
Yes.
Mrs. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Leighton,
Yes.
Mrs. Ashambo,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bertrand.
Yes. All right.
See you
Members,
soon.
watch for that Zoom link.
Very good.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
Right.
you.
Good night.